I wish I was a bit more fucked in the head and I could, have more fun in life.
You're still listening. This is our final transmission.
Jamie, hi, how you doing? It's me, Sam Russo. It's the Final Transmission podcast. It's one horror movie a week from the dawn of time to the end of time. It's Jamie Carruthers.
Hello.
Here he is. How you holding up, boy?
I'm doing well. Why did you hold an apple up?
Just to give you something to look at. Just fuck with you a little bit.
If you wanted to know what that apple looked like, you could subscribe to the Patreon for just $5 a month.
You will find out what kind of apple it is. Right now, only me, Jamie, and the patrons know. Let me tell you. It's a good apple.
Yeah, it's a good apple.
It's a big apple.
Well, I'm not saying anything.
Well, for an American audience, it's not. But for an English audience, it is. So, nonsense. Welcome to Final Transmission. I think we're both feeling really good today. It goes without saying we're well rested, good night's sleep.
Oh, yeah, of
5
course.
a day, exercise, diet, fucking the works. I mean, I've never been in better condition. What about you?
If I'm lying, then I'm doing great.
Good, me too. So today we're talking about a movie that I think is safe to say is very close to your heart. You're always talking about it. You won't shut up about how much you love this movie.
Is
you
that
said
true?
to me on many occasions, this might be your favorite movie of all time.
Is. Now I know that you're lying.
It's 2004's The Hazing.
Yes.
AKA, do you know the other title?
Dead Scared? Dead Sacred?
Scared.
Dead Scared? I think I got
Dead
it on
Scared.
DVD as Dead Scared.
Have you really? A German
Yeah.
version, perchance?
Potentially.
Interesting.
I do like this movie. We'll get into some details and some caveats and some backpedaling maybe a bit later. But
Already foreshadowing the backpedaling. That's impressive.
yeah, so it's from 2004. It's directed by Rolf Konevsky. It stars your friend and mine, Bradley Dourif.
Big BD, Oscar-nominated Brad Dourif in the movie we're talking about today. Interesting.
Yeah, this movie came out between The Two Towers and Return of the King. How do you feel about that?
Is he in those?
Yeah.
Is he? I don't know. Who is he in those?
He plays Wormtongue. I haven't seen them either, but he's in them.
Wormtongue.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's where he learned his English accent.
Which is A, great. B,
Very good.
fatally flawed.
Why is it fatally flawed?
There's one word that he says wrong.
Yeah, I remember hearing him say a word wrong, but I don't remember.
Passage
Yeah.
instead of passage. You'd think somebody on set would have had the groats to go up to old Brad Dourif and say, "You're saying it wrong."
Yeah, well, he was only there for maybe 3 hours, so...
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, passage ruined the whole thing. Sorry, bud. You did good, but that was not good.
Yeah, so it stars Bradley Dourif, also stars a firm favourite of mine, Tiffany Shepis.
Superstar in your world.
Yeah, Super Tromet Bulimia.
Super Tromet bulimia indeed. Can you imagine people who don't know what you're talking about hearing you say those words?
So if you don't know what that means, there was a TV show on Channel 4 that was produced by Troma just for Channel 4 called Troma's Edge TV. And it was presented by Trent Hagar and Tiffany Shepis, but her character's name was Super Tromet Bulimia. And it was good and very formative in my life. I've talked about it before in our sort of trauma episode, Toxic Avenger episode.
We haven't done Toxic Avenger.
No, what did we do? Class of Nukem High.
Yeah. That show, responsible for your first 11 boners.
I think I'd had 10 of those boners before that.
Okay.
10
That's
of those boners
meaningful.
watching A Woman Scorned on Channel 5, starring, what's her name?
Brad Dourif?
We've talked about her before as well. Gene Simmons' wife. Yeah, I can't remember her name.
Paul
but
Stanley.
But she was the one. Who else is in this movie, Sam? Philip Andrew.
Bud, we got Perry Shen roll out the red carpet.
Yeah, it's his second appearance on the Final Transmission podcast following his stellar turn in Hatchet.
Big Paz. Yeah, I like this guy.
Yeah? Have you watched the Hatchet sequels yet?
No.
So his character, you may remember, died in the first one.
Right.
But Parry Shen is in Hatchet 2 and Hatchet 3.
How
and
interesting.
Maybe even Hatchet 4.
That's surprising to hear, what with his demise and all. Don't tell me if it's flashbacks or resurrection or some kind of mad magic. I'll find out one day.
You will. But yeah, Philip Andrew, he was in Power Rangers Wild Force. He was the Lunar Wolf Ranger.
Interesting.
In the early 2000s reimagining of Power Rangers.
Man, Power Rangers is so fucking good.
Yeah.
Did you like Power Rangers growing up?
I did, but I don't think it was good.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was really good.
I think I realised quite early that it was recycled footage that they'd like bolted into a show full of Westerners.
Yeah.
And that made me feel weird.
That's part of why I loved it. It was so jank and nonsensical.
But like, I was already watching trauma movies by the time that Power Rangers was like...
Well, there you go. I wasn't. I was saving up to buy a Power Rangers toy. I didn't know trauma existed. I didn't know Anal Gape Bulimia 2 was available on VHS yet. So
yeah,
I was working towards that. But look how these worlds are colliding. All these movies that we've watched, all kind of coming together here today in a strange way.
It also features an early cameo from Brooke Burke in a sort of bit of stunt casting, which is weird because I don't really know who she is, but she is an E presenter.
A what? An E presenter?
She presented on the E network.
Oh, on the E chat. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
What, this is during her career as a broadcaster? She was broadcasting on E from like 99 to 2003, I think. How interesting. And you're saying she was a stunt human in this? No,
it was stunt casting.
Oh, she's Jill.
Yeah, they cast her as, hey, look, there's a famous person in this that isn't Brad Dourif.
Is that what that's called? Stunt casting?
Yeah.
Like casting her as a stunt. She has absolutely no right to be there. It's just for the bands.
Like Paris Hilton in 9 Lives and House of Wax.
She's
not there because of her acting chops, Sam.
How dare you? What do you think about Paris Hilton? While we're completely avoiding talking about this movie, what do you think about old Paz Hiltz?
Paz Hiltz. I quite enjoyed the Simple Life as a show concept. But I especially fancied Nicola Richie around that time. So
I thought
Nicole Richie,
a Richie head.
Yeah, you can't say a Richie head because her head is freakishly large.
She got a big head.
Yeah, it's huge. I think part of it was how slight her frame is.
Yeah, with
a normal sized head on top. I never prescribed to the big Paris Hilton hate.
Right.
Saved all that for Kim Kardashian.
Interesting. These are all just people that kind of passed me by in my existence. But I've sort of learned over the years, especially at this age, when I go to a party with lots of people I don't know about, I need to have questions prepared that are relevant. Like, what do you think about Paris Hilton? Gets me through the night.
Well,
is she going to be relevant? Like, I'm getting away with, like, what do you think about Tom Green? He's crazy because he's back. You know, I'm getting away with that now.
I think Paris Hilton's also back in some capacity. She recently, I think within the last 3 years, released an autobiography. And she maybe even wrote it herself. I don't know, but
wasn't stunt written by
Ghost written.
Tom Green. Ghost casted. So
I think it was written by Dan Otze.
It could be. You'd have to subscribe to his Substack to find out, which you are. Why don't we talk about this film?
Okay, The Hazing.
Stop fucking around.
Why don't I drop a synopsis and then we'll go to a break?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask.
Okay, so it's Halloween night, apparently. And during this Halloween night, it's also 2 separate hazings taking place at the same time. One for a sorority and one for a fraternity that are run by a couple. As part of this hazing ritual, there is a scavenger hunt which involves retrieving the Book of the Dead from Evil Dead.
From a guy.
Basically. During the retrieval of this book, a couple of characters accidentally kill the minder, the owner, the steward of this book. And then they make their way to a spooky old house where spooky goings on happen spookily.
That's a hot take for a Snops. I like it.
Yeah?
Yeah, spoiler free.
Well, yeah, we were always spoiler free before the break, Sam, eh?
I like your style. That's the movie, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I kind of picked this because I wanted to talk about Evil Dead. And we're never really going to talk about Evil Dead.
We might.
Well, we're going to talk about Evil Dead forever, but like we're never going to
Yeah.
cover Evil Dead as like a main thing.
Why is that a rule?
I think it's just too...
We make the rules.
Yeah. Well, I've made that one.
Jamie, this movie has 2 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. I think we're allowed a movie that people actually watch from time to time.
Yeah, fair enough. Also worth saying at the jump here, before we go to break, that this movie is available, at least in the UK, for free on Tubi.
Tubular.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, you can watch it with ads for no money.
You can watch it on Tube Top right
Yeah.
now.
All right, Sam, let's take this break. And we'll come
All right.
back and we'll
We've earned it.
get deep into the hazing.
All right.
Whoa, holy shit. I guess that's why they call it Phantom Power.
Okay,
whoa.
Sam.
Whoa. Hold your roll. Hold you hard there, boy. We're back.
We are back. We're going to talk about the hazing in as much detail as it deserves. So, this movie...
This has been Final Transmission. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, big boy. What do you need?
So, it's very clear that Rolf Konevsky wanted to make a movie that felt like Evil Dead.
It also is very clear that it's not clear that he wanted to make a movie at all. It feels like he was forced to make this movie in a strange way. But yeah,
Well,
it smacks of Evil Dead.
Yeah, like from the opening narration, even like there's like a bunch of Raimi-esque shots
Yeah.
that don't quite go right.
No. Some rushing POV stuff.
Yeah, they're all broken up
some-
by like terrible 2004 nonsense.
Oh, God, that like stop-start shit that you know I despise.
Yeah.
First 11 seconds of this movie, it took all of my resolve to not turn it off and just tell you I had a headache. It just... Wow, was that hard to get through. Glad I
Well-
did in a way, but fuck my ass. That was rough.
I heard that recording a podcast is actually good for a headache. So,
This logic sounds strangely familiar. We need to set the bar as low as possible for this episode because nothing we're talking about is going to be above that joke right there. That was the peak of intellectual repartee that you're getting out of this episode, gang.
yeah, so contrary to what you said about feeling like Rolf Konevsky didn't want to make this movie and was being forced against his will, this is actually a labor of love for him.
Really? This is the movie he wanted to make?
Yeah, he wrote this script, I think 5 or 6 years before they made it, and he shopped it around several times to try and raise the funding for it. And then off the back of Scream, some independent studios or independent financiers were looking to try and capitalize on that kind of self-aware, snarky, throwbacky type vibe of Scream without just making a Screamy knockoff.
Sure.
And they landed on this script, which had, like I say, had done the rounds for a while.
Sure.
And so he finally got the $750,000 together to make it.
We were just talking on the Patreon about what we'd do with £1 million. I wouldn't make the hazing. I'm just going to throw it out there. Even in 2004. Yes. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. You know more about this kind of stuff than I do, Jamie. How are scripts, quote unquote, shopped around? You always hear it like this script got sent around to a bunch of studios, blah, blah, blah. So let's say I write a script and I want to get it made into a movie. Do I just send it to every studio on Earth and some poor fucker at every studio has to read it and consider it to be made?
Yeah, I think
how it works?
Studios don't tend to receive unsolicited scripts.
Yeah, so like my agent or whatever.
Yeah, so I have to go via an agent. And that's just because if you send, I don't know, your script for The Hazing And then like The Blazing came out in 2005, and
Okay.
it was about like a sorority ritual, Evil Dead thing, but they also smoked some weed.
Yeah, can't it just be this
the-
but stoners? That would be fucking sick.
Then you might have a claim to sue the studio that made The Blazing,
Really?
which is why they don't accept unsolicited scripts.
Oh, so you can't sue because your agent submitted it?
No,
How's
because
that work?
then, well, they wouldn't make it. They wouldn't rip your script off because
Oh, I see.
it's gone through the proper channels.
Got you.
But what happened with this, I think, is it originally went to like some producers and they tried to raise up some funding, and they just couldn't. And then I think maybe 2 years later, Rolf Kineski sat down with Tiffany Shepis, who had a production company, a small production company at that time,
No way.
and she quite liked the script, and so they were going to produce it through her funding it, but they also weren't able to raise the funds then.
Okay.
And then, like I say, off the back of Scream, they were able to finally get it pushed through for 750 grand, presumably with Brad Dourif's name attached to it, because that's what I assume is what got this movie made.
Dude, how much of that did they pay to Bradley? Can't be that much because, you know, I'm not tipping my hand too much here, but there's some effects in this that aren't shite. Like they're not like, they're probably cheap on a grand scale, but they're not, you know, peanuts. Was Brad doing this because he wanted to?
Yeah, Bradley Dourif, is that Brad Dourif? He just liked the script and thought it was cool, and I think he's a guy that digs Evil Dead, and
Yeah.
kind of just wanted to have a bit of fun time. Like I say, so they shot all of the Lord of the Rings movies in one go, basically. So in 2004, let's say 2003, when they shot this, like he'd spent ages in New Zealand, away from his family, all this stuff. So presumably this shot like down the block from where he lived. So he was like, I'll do this movie for presumably not very much money, maybe scale. I don't know. I don't know if it was it must be a union production if it's got a big actor like Brad Dourif and he's using his own name.
What does scale mean? Is that like a door deal?
It's like minimum wage for actors.
Oh, okay. What is minimum wage for actors? This is fascinating. Welcome to Film School with Jamie Carruthers, by the way, everyone.
I don't actually know what scale actually is, but it's not very much.
Really?
Yeah.
It's enough to live on without having to be a like busboy or whatever all the Hollywood guys do.
Maybe if you're working every day, but people that tend to get paid scale don't work like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he's not getting paid scale.
No. I mean, there are some stories of like actors who worked for scale but also got points.
Right.
So they would get like, that's kind of more like a door deal.
You just have to put it in music terms for me to even remotely understand.
Yeah.
In February 2025, the average hourly pay for an actor in the United States was $27.36.
Yeah. Wages in America are generally higher anyway, unless you work in the service industry, right? So, like, I hear a lot of talk of Americans being like, oh my God, he only makes
80 grand a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, it's healthcare and all that shit, obviously.
Yeah.
And if you live somewhere cool, it's cost of living, blah, blah, blah. But still.
The idea of like doing your own tax returns in America, like how much of that is actually true? And like being audited by the IRS, is that just like a TV thing? Or is that like
real?
That's bonkers.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Well, rich people here have to do it too. If you get paid a fuck ton of money here, you have to do your own taxes.
Is it just that like characters in TV shows get paid a fuck ton of money because they're all architects or jingle writers or whatever?
Ron Weasley from Lord of the Rings or fucking Chandler Bing from Frasier or some shit. Yeah, you earn millions and wear big suits.
Yeah, like David Byrne.
What? I think if Brad Dourif was paid $27.36 an hour for this movie, he made under $100 and was paid appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much he got paid. And I know that like he was probably only on set for maybe a day, but he did do a lot of like prep work, because the thing that happens in the movie, I think we're in spoilers now, but a thing that happens in the movie is that the spirit of Brad Dourif's Professor Cap's character possesses a couple of other characters, and they do pretty good impressions of his accent, the voice that he's doing. But they're doing that, and he like worked very closely with Philip Andrew and Tiffany Shepard, who both end up doing that, to make sure that they were able to get those possessed scenes right. So he provided loads of recordings of like their lines as him, but him doing them so they could like replicate them. And he worked quite closely with them in rehearsals as well. So like there was a bunch of like, I guess, stuff that happened before set. Presumably you also get paid for. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting because if you don't give a shit about a film, the first thing you're going to cross off your to-do list is coaching the other actors on how to do an impression of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of that evidence supports the idea that he probably was into it. And yeah, if the director shopped this shit around for, donkey's years with, his hopes and dreams nailed to it, then this might be a passion project for some of these raging maniacs.
It's weird to me that it would be something that Brad Dourif would hitch his wagon to so fervently.
Maybe he's just a really conscientious professional.
Yeah,
if
maybe.
He's going to do anything, he's going to do it right. He might have done a fucking Ford commercial and approached it the same way.
Yeah, like we've talked about him before, and he's one of those actors that basically does everything that he's offered. But like if he approaches everything like this, then that's cool. I respect that.
Great.
It's not like dead-eyed Lance Henriksen and 25 more $2 westerns. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, trying to play it off like that's the point of the character is that he's dead-eyed, not that you're checked out completely. Yeah, I mean, Brad Dourif at this point doesn't need the money, let's be honest.
Yeah, like I say, he's literally off the back of Lord of the Rings. Like,
Lord of the Rings.
He's not a huge character in Lord of the Rings, but presumably he got 3, however long they spent in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Probably got a pretty decent per diem off that. And then also, like...
enough for a coffee and a Snickers bar. Who is he in that? Is he the fucking Sorting Hat or some shit? What's his name? He's
Wormtongue. I've seen the first one. And I thought it was the most boring shit I've ever seen. I saw it in the cinema when I was in high school with like a bunch of like friends from school. And I went out for 2 cig breaks during the movie because it's so long and so boring.
You've said nothing in the entire run of this podcast with such conviction as what you just said. You have fucking pulled some shit on this podcast, let me tell you. You've said some stuff I know you don't believe. I've never seen you say something so true to how you feel than that brief review of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Like, people fucking love them, and I just don't understand it.
People watch them, like, regularly.
Yeah. People are like, there's a guy that I work with who's like, I'm taking a day off work, I'm going to watch all 3 extended cuts of Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, cool. Like...
Why? Wow.
Yeah.
Bad films.
Maybe the second and third one are the greatest films ever made. I will literally never know because I'm never going to watch them.
You might. You're a guy who will one day have watched every movie ever and will have to resort to watching movies you know you hate. This is how we lose our sponsorship, by the way. Toby is such a Lord of the Rings fan.
Oh.
Might lose some patrons here as well. I know Chelsea's got a soft spot for the old Lord of the Rings.
I was thinking about Lord of the Rings when I was like doing a bit of research into this, and I didn't realize that it was like a New Line production. So like scrambling around like after the death of like slasher movies. Yeah. And they just sort of look into the biggest franchise of, well, Star Wars is the biggest franchise of all time, but like
fantasy franchise though, like strictly genre, bigger than Potter or whatever. What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Good work looping us back to horror. Well played. So The Hazing.
Yes.
Featuring no Gimlis or Weasleys, but one big fat Dourif. Should we just start by giving a broad general sense of what you think of this film?
Yeah, it's shit, but I like it.
Right, okay.
It's shit, but it kind of knows that it's not great. It sort of knows its budgetary limitations and I think it works quite well within the confines that it sets for itself.
Yeah.
And obviously it wants to be Night of the Demons. It wants to be Evil Dead, and it very much like hangs its hat on that flavor of horror, which didn't really exist in the early 2000s anymore. Like, people just weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have to respect it. There are 2 sort of very brief Bruce Campbell cameos. Did you catch those?
What? No.
So, at the start, when they're walking down the street, they look in a shop window, and there's a copy of If Chins Could Kill, and a signed photo of Bruce Campbell that says "Groovy."
Interesting.
And then later in the movie, someone pulls down a dartboard with a picture of Bruce Campbell on it.
I did see that. Now that you
Also signed, but it says "Not Groovy."
Very nice.
Yeah. It knows what it's doing. It very clearly references a bunch of movies
Yeah.
in a sort of spoofy way. Some of them are annoying. The Reservoir Dogs bit with the song, Jesus fucking Christ. Cut it out your movie. Fucking Eternal Sunshine it from my brain. Like, that is...
See, I don't know what was happening today, but I saw that happening, and normally I would have probably left the room for about 30 seconds and hoped it went away. But I was like, okay. I didn't mind. I don't know why. I think because it was Halloween-y,
Yeah.
and it wasn't exactly the music. I just sort of suspended my disbelief for a minute.
Do you want to hear a Halloween Reservoir Dogs story?
Yes, always.
So when I was 18, me and a group of mates were all going out on Halloween together. And my mate, Dan, was like, okay, we should all dress as a group costume. What should we dress as? And I was like, we should dress as really scary, gory clowns.
Right.
We all talked for weeks about our really scary, gory clowns outfits. And then on Halloween, Dan shows up in his really scary, gory clown outfit. And secretly, we'd all agreed to go as Reservoir Dogs. So we're walking down the street in slow motion in my brain, 2 little green bag. And we're 5 Reservoir Dogs and a stupid looking fucking £5 scary clown.
The shit clown.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Superb work from you. I didn't have you down as a prankster, an original prankster. What got into you?
I just wanted to bully a friend.
The spirit of the trickster was in you that night, Jamie. It was.
It was like I was Jamie Kennedy in Son of the Mask.
Son of the Mask. Holy crap. That dragged something out of the deep recesses of my brain. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, the song, the music in this is terrible. I have a bit of a soft spot for that surfy song with the
Always.
with the,
Surf
the
gets a
sort of pseudo Jello Biafra vocals. And
I thought I admittedly had to look up just to double check it wasn't Dead Kennedys.
yeah. What is that band? It was called like Insect Suit or something.
I just saw it wasn't Dead Kennedys and moved
Yeah.
on.
They're like a real they call themselves whatever they're called, Insect something.
Yeah.
They call themselves the longest running modern surf band.
Mm.
And they're still together now.
Oh, no.
If you look at their Wikipedia, they have no original members, and they've had maybe 130 members since the 70s.
Jesus.
They had a franchise where there was like an LA version and a New York version.
That's genius. Oh my God, franchise your band.
Yeah.
Wow. You can do West Coast and East Coast tours at the same time. What am I doing here? That's brilliant.
Yeah. I wish I could remember their
Wow.
fucking name, though.
God, that's clever. Oh, you devious fuckers. I bet that's a thing in function band world. It's not a thing in original artists, is it? But like, you could have the same fucking band with 2 names playing 2 different places in the country and no one would have a clue.
Yeah. The Insect Surfers. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Not just a clever name. Wow. Great band.
Yeah.
Insect Surfers, we salute you. Sure wing. That's some good shit.
We're not worthy.
So I don't have a huge problem with the soundtrack per se. I have a problem with how it's used. It's always too long or too short or too fucking stupid for what's happening.
Yeah.
It just feels a little bit haphazard.
I quite like the use of that Tickle Pink song at the beginning to denote the 50s, but I just like that song from playing Fortnite, from playing Fallout even. So
Yeah, it's a good jam. Not
Yeah.
the worst placement. Yeah. That's it for the soundtrack for me. Done.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. But like that's a thing in Rolf Koneski films. So I also watched in preparation for this his first movie, which I think was one of the first like meta self-aware slasher movies or slasher style setup movies that ever existed. It came out in 1991. It's called There's Nothing Out There. And there's like a Randy character, to bring it back to Jamie Kennedy of Son of the Mask, who is constantly talking about the things that are happening in the film. Like, let's not go that way. If we went that way, that's like a horror film. Like, if we all do that, we're going to get killed in a horror film way. And this is 91, so this is way before Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Like, people are making self-aware movies in the late 80s and the early 90s, but they're not making self-aware movies that know that they're horror movies and have a character within the movie who's like... So that's quite an interesting thing, but it also has an incredibly dog shit soundtrack.
Yeah. It's interesting. It feels a bit like it's just not his focus. It's an afterthought. It's just not really... We'll bang some music in. What's
worse is like it's not just like, oh, here's some library music that vaguely fits the scene. It's all original like written and created music specifically for the movie. But he just doesn't know any real musicians. So
yeah, maybe.
It's just like the Insect Surfers are the nearest things to musicians that he knows.
Yeah.
And that's why the surf song in this, I know that we saluted them before, but that felt mean, didn't it?
Maybe it's not a great song. I don't know.
But like,
I enjoyed it in the moment.
Yeah, that's why that song feels like an actual piece of music rather than just like plinky plonky. Oh, it's Halloween night, spooky night, Halloween, spooky, which is a song that basically happens later in the movie.
Yeah. So 2 points real quick. He wrote a TV movie called Emmanuel Through Time, Emmanuel's Sexy Bite. Which
so he spent like a bit of like a wasteland part of his career making like super low budget erotic thriller type movies.
Yeah, which great. But the fact attached to that is that it's rated higher on IMDb than The Hazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people love that Emmanuel series, right? Like,
sure.
Those Emmanuel movies got me through some pretty hard times when I was a kid.
Hard times. But you know what people love more? Teen horror comedy slashers, which this pretty much is. Yeah. So why is this so poorly regarded? Why do people not pump the plums of The Hazing?
Everyone that I have ever spoke to about The Hazing, who has seen it, has liked it with some caveats and some backpedaling and, you know, all the stuff that I've got inside me itching to come out. But people hold horror movies to a higher standard than they hold cheap erotic thrillers. Surely, like, you're watching an Emmanuel movie, it's like, yeah, first 3 minutes was great, 10 out of 10. Like...
and slowly closing the laptop.
Yeah. That period of self-awareness when you close the laptop and you flush the tissue. Like,
yeah, that's the glory days of the
take the bag off your head and,
untie your bindings.
Let the cat out. Put the peanut butter back in the fridge.
Holster the taser.
Yeah. Unsheath the butt plug.
Scrape the residue from the hot radiator. Pop your eye back in its socket. I don't know, man. It just feels like this movie gets hated on.
Well, did you read many reviews?
I didn't read many. I read what I would consider an informative cross-section.
I don't think I've seen many bad reviews.
I think what saves it is you would have to be fucking dumb as a shoe to think this movie is taking itself seriously.
Yeah.
In all the ways that a lot of, other movies in the genre do. So that runs to the rescue of reviews that are just about to burn it down. It normally says like, this is fucking dumb, but also kind of fun.
Yeah.
So it obviously gets a few things right. And what I think it gets right for the general viewership is the fun element of the horror movie, because it is not scary at all. It's objectively unscary. So let's talk a bit about the fun. What did you enjoy about this movie? Also, I've never heard you mention this ever, A, but B, in any context of Halloween movies at all. So it must be quite far down your list of Halloween slapper honors.
Yeah, I sort of forgot that it existed. And I was scrolling through Tubi fairly recently, and I was like, oh yeah, The Hazing. That was a movie that I liked. Maybe I'll make Sam watch it.
You are a sadist.
So
it's a good match because I'm a masochist. Carry on.
Things that I liked. I mean, going back to the music, the idea that the music becomes diegetic when they steal the guitar, and then and also the guitar versus chainsaw fight where there's like it's ripping a solo. That's really fun to me.
That's very fun. Yeah.
The demonic possession cunnilingus scene is something that speaks to me at a deep personal level. Not just because I'm a demon in the sack, but which is it's wild that that's not a joke that they make in the movie, right?
There's a lot of scope for puns here. I imagine a lot was left on the writer's room floor. I like that scene, and I just don't think I normally would. So I was suspicious as to why. And I think they were just getting teen comedy right in that scene and in a lot of other scenes. But there was almost like a dedication to the craft of doing terrible teen comedy horror before Scary Movie and before all that nonsense that just kind of pays off. The tongue stuff is really close to being dreadful until you get the scene where he has no tongue and he's trying to talk, and it's genuinely funny.
Yeah. Like he keeps forgetting, and he's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good bit, and he's spitting like real-looking blood everywhere, and everyone's like trying to stop him talking. It's a very good bit. I was quite impressed how they rounded that scene out.
Yeah, well, I even like the juxtaposition of like he's like 5 feet away from her, like wrestling with his tongue while she's like having this intense orgasm like over there.
Yeah.
And like that's just really funny to me that he's like they're like juxtaposing like her pleasure with his goofy pain over here.
Yeah.
And like we don't need to see what's happening underneath the sheet. Like we all know it's really funny. But like and then like it sort of flopping around, like the disembodied tongue flopping around on her. It's just like as an effect goes, it is very cheap but quite effective, I think.
It's a good effect. Even the effects that are fucking shocking, like the transformation into the mannequin scene where her hand's up and then it's just a mannequin hand. Like that. Even that is pretty good for my money. It's the kind of effect that I like in a movie like this.
I think the mannequin thing as well, not that bit, but like a tiny bit later is the nearest thing to actually creepy in the whole movie.
I know that's the thing. I know a lot of people find mannequin stuff really scary, and I was watching it trying to put myself in people's shoes who find that upsetting, and I was like, that probably is a moment of scary.
The bit that I mean is when the sorority leader girl who's like trying to scare them originally has turned into a mannequin and is like at the top of the stairs, and Tiffany Shepard and a couple of the other characters like happen upon the mannequin, and they're like, oh. They jump for a second and they're mad about it and they throw her down the stairs. I mean, that's creepy to me because it's like we know that she's actually the person, and like the broken bits of mannequin that have like flesh in them is kind of creepy.
That is quite creepy, yeah. It's maybe not executed as well as it could be in order to elicit genuine fear, but it's it actually kind of fits tonally basically perfectly with what's happening.
I think conceptually, at least, it's very creepy. Like I can, the thing that plays out in my brain when I think about it is much creepier because like those effects leading up to that look like they're from an episode of Goosebumps. So
yes,
you've already sort of you've kind of broken the circle of trust there. But
I don't know, because for me that was a big endearing factor in the movie that it made me think of Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps and even like I'd go as deep cut as Erie, Indiana at times.
Yeah.
And it also, which is, you know, a huge horror reference point for me, it felt very Scooby-Doo, which you know I love. So there was a lot happening that was really working for me. The pistons were kind of firing. It helped that the humor was exactly what I think I needed in that moment of watching that movie. I could see it maybe just really pissing some people off if they sat down for like a serious movie and encountered this. But as a goofy Saturday night rental, Scooby-Doo, Are You Afraid of the Dark, semi-slasher, sprinkling of slasher vibes, and Brad Dourif's like disembodied spirit floating around all green like Nightmare. It's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, I also wrote Nightmare down in my notes. There are some
Nightmare
shots
vibes.
that look, especially for any American listeners, Nightmare was like a British kids virtual reality game show in the 90s where children would wear a child would wear a stupid helmet, and three of his mates from like Bromsgrove primary school would be like, take one step forward, and they would fall down a virtual reality hole.
Yeah.
Like,
and there was like a dungeon master type character who was
Yeah.
mischievous and slightly malevolent. And the idea was that these kids would quest through lots of different environments to an absolutely impossible ending.
yeah. I never saw
and it was-
anybody win. Did you?
No, never.
No.
I saw them get various items like the helmet and the goblet. I remember seeing someone get the sword. Lost my mind. It was fucking impossible.
Yeah.
Punishingly hard to children. Like, everyone was so mean to the kids. Like, oh, what a surprise. Henry's fallen off the cliff. Go home, Henry. You're an idiot. Like, it was so bad. But it was one of the best TV shows ever. And there was something in the production value that felt nightmare-esque, and something in the attitude of fun. And it was fun juxtaposed with jeopardy. It was fast. It's kind of, the pace is really choppy. It's like, quick action, break, rest, erotic joke, quick action, break, rest.
Yeah, party
PC
hats.
joke. Yeah, exactly.
How do you feel about boobs being called party hats?
Ecstatic. To be honest, it's one I'd never heard. So bring it. Like,
I think that's a
any
direct
that I haven't
reference.
heard, I'm into.
And that's a direct reference from maybe Sleepaway Camp, maybe Slumber Party Massacre, where
They
somebody
call them party
calls
hats.
where they call boobs party hats.
I'm into it. There's not much boob humor in this movie that I'm not into, to be honest. It's not good, but it's so pitch perfect for the movie. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel... There's always these moments in movies like Freddy vs. Jason. The humor feels fucking telegraphed from a different movie. It doesn't fit, doesn't work, falls short. And it makes the humor feel even more puerile. So this is some of the most puerile humor imaginable, but it's lodged perfectly tonally with the rest of the movie. So you don't feel like, oh, you lowered the tone. You feel like that is wholly appropriate for the moment happening right now.
Yeah, I think like there's something about, I mean, all of the Friday the 13th movies and the humor that's in them, obviously it gets more humor focused as they move through.
Yeah.
But there's something about humor juxtaposed with like something that's genuinely quite scary, like Jason Voorhees, that like doesn't gel quite right for me.
Right.
Whereas like, you know, a ghostly Brad Dourif not being very scary and having a terrible fucking biker mustache, like that's fine. We can have some fun here.
Yeah. The problem for me with a lot of humor in Friday movies and adjacent properties is it's written by much older men, and they're always writing dialogue for younger women that does not fit the actress, the moment, the movie, none of it. It feels so out of place. It's like Woody Allen writing slasher dialogue. It always sucks. It feels cringe. Whereas this, sure, not exactly on the money for the time and the place in terms of humor, but pretty close. Close enough for the movie, I would say.
I think that works. Like it's just a fun movie with a fun tone. So like,
it's not like malicious sexist humor, is it? It doesn't. There's a few moments where a character is obviously behaving in a heinously sexist way, but that's their character. It's not that the movie feels dated and sexist and mean. It's not mean spirited in that regard at all, I don't think. There's a few It's
interesting that, I don't know, when left alone with a mannequin with some party hats, you would immediately start groping the boobs of the mannequin. But like, you know,
Are you saying you wouldn't?
I'm not going to argue with that. Like, maybe that's a thing that you would do. I don't know.
This is Jamie's "I'm not perfect, but I don't grope mannequins" moment.
Yeah.
Mannequins have come a long way.
Yeah. Have you come a long way into mannequins?
I can't honestly say I've ever had sex with a mannequin. And I've had plenty of opportunities, bud, let me tell you. Mannequins love me.
Rolf Koneski was 35 when this movie came out.
Too old to be making a movie like this.
Yeah. I guess, like, he'd written it prior. I assumed that, like, maybe Tiffany Shepis, who is, you know, low budget horror royalty at this point.
Yeah.
And I mean, she endures in my eyes at least. But
Right.
she's a smart lady and like a pretty decent writer herself. So I wonder if like her dialogue at least was punched up by her. And
Quite possibly, yeah.
because like you say, the dialogue coming from the female characters, coming from the you know, these young freshman college students of just a fresh 35 years old or whatever they are. Like,
Yeah, these fresh-faced first day of college initiates.
like the dialogue is good.
Yeah, I mean, for the guys, I think less so, and deliberately, the guys are dumb. All the
Yeah.
guys are dumb. And there's some, like, fairly adroit little fucking turns of character here and there, you know, when something's revealed about a character that is contrary to what we've seen
Like
previously
Delia
in the movie.
being not a dumb bimbo-y type gal.
Exactly. And at the end, we get the revelation that Tim, Parry Shen's character, has lost his virginity, so nah.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know. It's kind of fun, kind of silly, but it does speak to an increased level of depth in the writing that maybe isn't apparent to the casual viewer on first watch. I think there is something there that's worth noting, in defense of the movie. I'd be shocked if this wasn't the kind of production where people were like, do I have to say that? It's so dumb. And he was like, yeah, okay, say something different.
Let's talk about the big issue with the movie, which is the fact that it's made in 2004 and therefore looks like a movie that was made in 2004 with all of the bullshit trappings of a 2004 movie.
Yeah.
Those like juddery cuts and weird. Like if this movie was made 5 years earlier, it could be a classic.
Yes. I mean, 35 years earlier, it could have been a classic.
Well, definitely that.
35 years later, it could have been a classic. It suffers its timing. But that being said, I'm going to go on record here and say, opening credits aside, it's the best of the type. Do you know what I mean? You know that, like, you wouldn't steal a car advert.
Yeah.
Some movies of this era are that from start to finish. This doesn't fall into that trap. It sticks with classic haunted house movie editing for the most part. And that I respect in 2004. You know, you just saved your movie. So there's very little from that credit moment forward where I think, oh, fuck off 2004. I actually think, I remember 2004. This is the best of a terrible time.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
Like if you think about 13 Ghosts or whatever, which I also think is pretty good. Like it's a fun movie. We've got Matthew Lillard. Like what's then to not like? But
you don't need anything more, do you? But the first thing I think of is ouch. The editing, the effects, the everything sucks apart from Lillard and a vaguely decent plot. Like,
yeah, it's a visual interpretation of a Korn song. Like
yeah, complete with like sped up clocks. And, juddery, like drunk goggles from year 9. Like it's a fucking mess. I don't know whose fault it is. If anyone's written a paper on who the fuck came up with that aesthetic and that like set of rules for this genre of movies in that period of time, they need a swift kick up the trousers. That is not good art.
A thing that's clear here is that Rolf Konevsky is not Sam Raimi.
He ain't. But the thing that comes through for me is he's obviously a fan. You know, who the fuck isn't at this point making horror movies in Hollywood? But he's a fan and he's tipping his hat and he's doing his best to acknowledge that he's not Sam Raimi and he wants to make something more teenage, much sillier, much lower brow.
Yeah.
And, doing that with a tip of the hat to Sam Raimi is no harm done, in my opinion.
I often wonder about like directors that came up around early mid-90s to the early 2000s, because I think really they're the first generation of filmmakers that really grew up with the horror boom in the 80s.
Yeah.
So like the sensibility is completely different to like a Wes Craven or like even other people that were making like low budget horror movies in the 80s who I guess came of age in the 70s, and so their touch points are more sort of Carpenter and things like that.
Yeah.
So we get more of like the horror fanatic director around this time.
Sure.
And I think that gives us some interesting stuff. And it just sort of moves us into this more sort of self-aware meta direction that we end up drowning in now. I kind of hate it. I went to see the movie Companion a few weeks ago, and just so much like horrible stuff happening, and then a character being like, "Whoo, well that just happened." It's like, fuck off, mate.
God. Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, it's unforgivable. I think Evil Dead is so phenomenally good, obviously, on so many levels. Like you said, we're never going to, maybe never going to go into an enormous amount of detail on it. But that coming out the way it did, with the backstory it has, and the budget that it has, I just think must have put so many people to absolute shame at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
To see that and think, oh my fucking God, look what these scrappy nitwit kids pulled off with a fucked up cabin, a borrowed camera, no money, no actors, and just the spirit of friendship.
Yeah, a camera nailed to a bit of wood, like
literally
to the front of a motorbike, like
nailed, like freezing to death, sleeping in a swamp. You know, using the director's actual car. You know, all the lore that we know about this movie, all the books that have come out about it. Fuck me, you must look at your movie in that period of time and just think, oh my God, this guy wants it more than me. He's working harder. He's cleverer. He's got more ingenuity. He's more original. What have I done? That must have shot the shit out of a lot of projects, but also injected an enormous amount of urgency into a load of young directors.
Yeah, definitely. I think it showed people that they could do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, Sam Raimi has a different sensibility to other horror directors that were coming out around that time. It's because the movies that he was making in his back garden with Bruce Campbell and Robert Tapper and his brother and all of those people, they were comedies, and they were trying to sort of capture Three Stooges. So they were trying to it was a comedy style approach to a horror movie. I mean,
they're doing skits.
Yeah. So even when they're making the first Evil Dead, which isn't a comedy, or it's like a comedy, but instead of jokes and punchlines, it's just horror.
Yeah.
So the horror is the punchline. And
the gore is the punchline. The explosive violence. Yeah.
I think that might be a quote from Mark Kermode. It's like the gore is like custard pies or something like that. It's just a completely different sensibility that just approached horror in an entirely new way. And I think you're right. I think it did massively upset the apple cart, but also showed people that maybe we don't just need to look at, these William Castle movies from the 50s as like the text that we now build horror on. We can start bringing in these wider reference points, and it'll make the genre more interesting. And we sort of moved away from that a bit, because by the late 90s and the early 2000s, the people that are making horror movies at that point, they grew up watching Evil Dead. They didn't grow up watching Three Stooges skits.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the issue, and how we've ended up in the world where we are now, where even a movie that I really enjoy has some fairly difficult or unoriginal or uninspired stuff happening in it, because the comedy comes from a place of, I've seen loads of comedy horror films and I'm making a comedy horror film, rather than my sensibility is comedy and I'm making a comedy film that's also a horror film.
Yeah, it's certainly almost 100% an original moment in cinema, isn't it? What Evil Dead does. And we're in 2004 now. There's been an enormous amount of breathing space between that movie coming out and this. You're probably playing to an audience that maybe hasn't even seen Evil Dead, the younger end of the audience, or just the less into movies end of the audience. And it's very self-referential, it's dumb, it's not original, and it's derivative, essentially. But we're allowed this, right? This is a fucking full-blown midnight snack of a movie. Yeah, because we know all those things. That is what it is.
It also doesn't feel derivative. It feels like it feels playful, and it feels loving. It's like a loving homage, rather than if I take this bit of Evil Dead and this bit of Night of the Demons and this bit of Patrick and this bit of whatever, and I shove all that together, I'm going to make $1 million.
And I get Brad Dourif. Yeah, exactly. And I work with people I like, and I try and imbue it with that spirit of urgency and everything else. Yeah, I agree. I think I actually mean derivative, not in a bad way in this in this context. Like how pop punk is all derivative, but some
Yeah.
of it's fucking great, you know. Yeah, it's a tough one to dislike in a lot of ways, and I'm almost surprised. I think it's a real taste test, isn't it? Like if you like dumb jokes, boobies, and cheap scares, then you're gonna love this. I think if you like that all in moderation, you'll probably tolerate it. And if you absolutely hate that kind of movie, you are shit out of luck, my friend.
Yeah, it feels a thing that it captures from like Evil Dead or maybe Evil Dead 2 is that it feels like a scrappy underdog of a movie.
Big time, yeah.
That's part of a big part of its charm, I would say, is that it feels like a director and a writer who's the same guy, like just trying to do something fun and trying to make something that he wants to make because he wants to make it, rather than like, oh, Scream was big, so I'm going to write a meta slasher like The Thousand, I've Been Watching You, and Stab, and all of those sort of cheap straight to DVD slashers that came out like around the time that Scream did, because they're really easy to make. You get 5 fairly good looking people and you shove them in a house with a guy with a knife. Like that's
it.
it. Yeah.
This has charm. That's the charm of it for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm almost saturated with charmless, violent movies that try and be funny. That I maybe am a little bit cynical about them. Whereas this is a pretty decent antidote to all of that.
Yeah.
It's not something that I imagine has like a really rabid fandom. There's probably a really core audience for this who love it and watch it every Halloween. But it's a real nice palate cleanser for me, having seen so much cynical junk. This does feel like it comes from a slightly loving place. There's elements of it I still think feel forced, despite now learning that maybe it was a big passion project for at least the writer-director. There's aspects of it that drag on a little bit and feel like there was maybe a lack of ideas in that period in the movie or whatever. Like I do remember thinking, this is surprisingly fun. I had that moment, and then I was like, I'll just see how much is left, because I thought I was near the end, and it was not even halfway through.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pacing issues, sure, but for the most part, I just think I felt washed clean by the crystal clear waters of somebody actually enjoying themselves for a change.
Well, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like last week we talked about Cat People, which I think is a quote unquote real movie, and is full of like debatable but I think lofty ideas and things that it's trying to say. But it doesn't ever feel like anyone's having any fun in the making of that movie.
Oh, especially not the cats.
Yeah.
No one's having fun in that movie. And I thought about it a lot after that episode, because I walked away from that recording thinking, you are a fucking dildo in the punch bowl. Couldn't you find anything nice to say about that film? And my enduring feeling is no.
Well, so I wanted to ask you a question about the hazing.
Yeah.
When we see that little view inside the hell dimension and it's all red, obviously that was a thing that was a bit of a bone of contention in Cat People, was like the little weird red matte painting scape with
Just
the
all
cats
the
in the trees. How did you feel about like that
orange.
weird little CG look in the hell dimension where there's little goofy demons and it's all red?
I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
It's 2004.
Yeah.
A. B. It had slightly more visual appeal to me, given the context. You know, in this movie, it feels like an appropriate move. I like any dumb little vision of hell. I think hell is hilarious as a concept. So I enjoy looking into hell. Did I think it was good? No, but it didn't leave me with a disgusting taste in my mouth and make me want to leave the room. I just thought, like, there it is. There's hell. Wholly budgetary appropriate level of hell.
I really
what did you
enjoy.
think?
I mean, I think it looks fine. It looks terrible and cheap, but in a way that is, it's not like, hey, let's linger on this shot for ages because we're really proud of it. It's like
We're showing off the CG. Like,
like get in, get out. This is hell. See you later. I think my favorite special effect in the movie is probably the worst one, which is when the portal closes up and like the bricks all come back in.
Love it.
That's
Superb.
That's what I wrote down. That's the thing that really reminded me of Nightmare.
Yep.
Was like that portal closing up is like straight from. Bear in mind, Nightmare was like 92, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean. They must have paid Dourif something for this. That is a jackpot effect for me. Like, everything that ties the enjoyment of the movie together for me is linking bad but totally appropriate jokes with some honestly quite pleasing visuals.
Yeah.
A level of jeopardy that is fine for the tone and pitch of the movie, and the effects. I love Brad Dourif's green floating face. I love that brick effect. I love the portal. All of that stuff is right up my street. Because for me, all I need, if you're going to show me hell, all I need is a red glow upwards of someone's face looking down horrifiedly. I don't actually need to see hell. So if you can show me that you're having fun and that you have an interesting take on these visuals and that you're referencing the 80s essentially, but you're doing so in a way that doesn't feel criminally derivative. You're doing so in a way that tells me you love that. Then I find that irresistible, and I think there's a lot to be said for that approach and the effect it has on the audience, because it's such a sense of fun in those moments.
Yeah, there are like directors.
Straight up Scooby-Doo.
There are directors and I guess cinematographers who have massive reverence for the 80s.
Yeah.
But like when they make their 80s throwback movie, it still feels, I don't know, corporate or like derivative in a way that is not fun.
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, this movie isn't like trying to slavishly recreate the 80s, like say a bunch of those like fairly recent slashers that came out where it's like, was The Final Girls and it's all the stuff that they're doing, because like Happy Death Day was great. Did you see Happy Death Day?
No.
That's like a slasher, but it's Groundhog Day. So every time this girl gets killed by the slasher, she wakes up and it's the start of the day again. And so she keeps getting like slightly further into figuring out who the slasher is, or like evading the killer. And it's pretty...
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. We'll maybe cover that at some point because it's a fun movie.
Sounds really good.
Like that did really well. So like these big high concept, like time-based slasher comedies are a bit of a thing at the moment.
Yeah. Even just movies like The Void or something like that, like you said, works really hard to create an 80s atmosphere and aesthetic. Sometimes really pays off. Sometimes is just a mess. This isn't doing that, is it? It's not giving you 80s film grain or anything like that, or even a color palette that's reminiscent of the 80s. It feels totally 2004.
Yeah, I think like it has a specific film grain on it because I think it was shot in 16mm and then blown up, so it looks like shit. Like
was it really?
I think so.
Fucking hell! I must have had a really good. Well, I watched it on Tubi the same as you. I thought it looked pretty slick.
Well,
not nice, but slick.
I think it looks like a movie that was shot on 16mm and blown up, but and I think that gives it the feel of like an 80s movie without having to do all the fucking over with a shotgun shit.
Yeah. Saved himself a fortune.
Yeah.
Just by being a bit crap.
I think if this movie was made 5 years later, it would be borderline unwatchable because it would have been shot on like a DV camera with like a load of fake grain thrown on it.
You know a scene I really like in this film?
Go on.
It's very brief. It's when, I'm just going to say Deadite because I don't know what else. Possessed demon Deadite guy is spinning around. You know the spinning shot? The super Raimi, fast rotation faces thing. And he gets slightly more horrific with every cut back. I thought that was really effective. I thought it was maybe it was my mannequin moment as far as like your scare is concerned. I found that unnerving. Yeah,
I think that's just clever. And it's very Raimi. And like obviously it calls to mind specifically that bit when Bruce Campbell is tied to a crucifix on the front of a motorbike or whatever, like speeding through a forest.
Yeah.
Which fucking genius. But like
magic.
It really works. It really sells that in Dead Scared, what we called the Hazing. And yeah, I think that's fun and cool. And like the incremental, like you say, the cutting back and forth is I thought that the demon prosthetics and like I say, the performances where they're doing impressions of Brad Dourif is pretty great. And so like anything that like involved those transformations I thought was really fun.
Yeah, that spin sequence in particular felt it was Buffy to me. It was straight up Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuff, which again, big place in my heart. But in terms of the demonic possession, mask work, etc., the makeup, I liked it until I read something in a review that kind of changed my mind. That was like, Evil Dead did this 5,000 times better with no money. There's no excuse to not have excellent demon heads in this if you're ripping off Evil Dead. And I was like, oh, actually a good point. But again, like, it didn't feel like it wanted to be as scary as Evil Dead. It felt like it wanted to just be almost like a throwaway effect. The faces aren't that important. It's the fact that they're demons and they're chasing you that's important.
Yeah.
And it's really just a vehicle for, madcap, semi-slapstick, one-liner type comedy horror. So I'm not deducting any points for the slightly shoddy makeup work. I don't think it's bad. I just think I would agree that it could be better.
Well, speaking of points, why don't we take a break, Sam, and come back and give our final thoughts and scores?
Let's do that, bud.
Come on, man. Does that thing even work? No. There's nothing out there. It's just dead air.
I am back.
I'm back, Sam. And if we still have a sponsor, this would be where we would refer to them as a place that you would go and look at tour dates and find out about punk rock bands. But seeing as we've alienated them, I'm saying don't go to redscare.net.
Or do.
Or do. Do or don't. There is no try.
You should, because there's a lot happening right now in the world of Red Scare. Some great tours being announced, some excellent shows coming up, some wonderful releases, and as always, a veritable cornucopia of merchandise for your purchasing pleasure. So dive into redscare.net, treat yourself, treat a loved one. It's a long time till Christmas. We got to fucking have something to live for, gang.
Yeah. All right, so let's do our wrapping ups. Do you want to go first?
Sure. The Hazing, it's just a bloody good time. It's irresistible. It's naughty. It's a gooseberry of a movie. It has nothing really good about it in terms of the movie, but the core concept is great. Like the basic storyline, the elevator pitch of the movie is sick. Like basically unfuckwithable. It's held back only by its place in space and time. There's loads of stuff I really like about it, almost to the point where I found it heartwarming, dare I say. And it kind of kept me on my toes. It kept making me think, surely it's going to do something that makes it an unforgivable piece of trash that I'm never going to revisit. But it kind of doesn't. And it ticks along in a really engaging, energetic way, does a couple of things that are interesting, has some moments that aren't aesthetically vile, which I consider a big plus given its time and place. And it just generally speaking knows what it's doing and does it quite well. So I'm going to have to give it 6 big old boobies out of 10.
6 pie hats.
Yep, 6 big old boobies. 6
big old
individual cleavages out of 10.
Nice.
What about you, bud?
Well, I mean, like I say, I really like it. I think that I agree that there is a heartwarming quality to it, and it's not anything that really happens in the movie, although it does defy some expectations by having like the girl characters not be like cheap bimbo type characters. They have a bit of agency. They have some interesting things to say. They flip the script in some ways, and so the 3 sort of survivors that we have at the end, which is Tiffany Shepis, Delia, Nectar Rose's Delia, and Parry Shen as Tim, like they all do something that's kind of surprising. Yeah, there's the whole Tim's not a virgin thing. Delia's not a ditzy idiot.
And Shepis isn't dead.
Yeah, she sort of the goofy like button of like the portal opening up just to like spit her back out is fun and
it's fine
and something that Sam Raimi would do if he'd have thought of it.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, and I like that by subverting the ditzy bimbo trope, we actually get to really enjoy a good ditzy bimbo for a chunk of time. You know, there's a lot to be said for that. They're fun. So have her in, subvert it, flip the script. Good fun.
Yeah, and I think it's just fun that it's like, yeah, I was pretending because I wanted to fuck you.
Yeah, I want to get laid. And the only way I can do that is to be as dumb as a fucking shoe.
Yeah. So, like, obviously that is an inversion of what we would normally see, which is like the horny dude frat boy character trying his best to
learn
fuck
poetry.
anyone that would, good fun. I think like it does have some egregious things, like there's those 2004 janky jerky janks.
Yeah.
But it has a pretty decent central performance, but a pretty decent performance from Brad Dourif.
Yeah.
And I really do think that like the performances of the other people as Brad Dourif are pretty good. Like you say, it's heartwarming, but like the movie isn't heartwarming. The things that we're seeing aren't heartwarming, but like the fact that it sort of exists in the way that it does kind of gives me a bit of a warm, fuzzy feeling in my chest.
Yeah, which is weird because these movies of this era normally give me the exact opposite, like the worst kind of ice in my veins disgust. So it's got to be for me the Scooby-Doo aspect, really. It's the haunted house Raz. It's the silly college kids that aren't absolutely obnoxious and repulsively offensive the whole way through, that are at least kind of likable at times.
Yeah, the core of them are likable at least, because the ones that die, you're like, well, these are expendable characters, whatever.
Yeah.
But the ones that you're spending the whole movie with are good characters, decent, well-written characters.
And you feel like they might die. Like there's at no point where I think those last three were definitely going to survive, like Safe as Houses. I genuinely thought they were all going to die at different points, which is enough engagement for me to make a movie like this cruise. Like, if I even care to that extent that I'm thinking, he might die, then I'm in. I'm essentially in. If I care so little that I'm not even latching onto a character enough to care whether they live or die, then you've lost me. But something about this movie is magnetic enough to make you care about some members of the cast, which is more than you can say about a lot of 2004 slasher adjacent low budget horror movies.
Definitely. And like you mentioned earlier, and I completely agree, there is a bit of a pacing issue where it feels like for a 98-minute movie or whatever it is, like it feels, it's not even 98, it's 87.
87,
like,
sorry, yeah.
So like for an 87-minute movie, there's a point, like you say, about halfway through where you're like, all right, this must be wrapping things up now, and it fucking isn't.
It's watching like 25 minutes of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's because it's got, if I was being pretentious Jamie talking about Panther movie, I would try and compare this to the first sexual encounter of an overly eager young male. It goes like the clappers at first, and then it slowly finds its groove and finds a bit of pacing. But then it ruins itself by doing so. It soils itself in a way. But then it picks up the pace again at the end and ultimately delivers what we all want. So, I don't hate the pacing. It just did make me check my watch once or twice.
Yeah, it's just, like you say, there's a lot of charm to it. It's just, it feels sweet. It feels scrappy, underdog type movie. It feels like the movie that you want to put your support behind.
I'd go as far as to agree, yeah. And I think it's because it doesn't go to that place of, absolute dog shit, bottom of the barrel, toilet humor. It makes it worth backing a little bit that it's trying to be even remotely witty.
Like if Scream is like your big fucking burger franchise, McDonald's or whatever, this feels like going to your local burger van.
Yeah, it's wimpy.
Yeah.
It still sucks, but it's there somehow.
Yeah. It does a weird sliced up hot dog in a bun.
If you're putting Benderumptious Bendy Bender in a bun on your menu, I'm backing your movie.
Yeah.
There should be a wimpy slasher. That'd be so sick.
Yeah, that would. Like Last Night at the Lobster, but it's a slasher set in a
Last
wimpy.
Night at the Wimpy and it's a slasher. Oh, how many
like
studios
Intruder.
are we going to have to shop that around?
Like, Intruder, but it's the last wimpy in the Bull Ring in Birmingham.
Where is the last one? Because the one in Hayville's gone.
I think there's still one in the shopping centre in Salford.
Really?
And I think there's still one in the shopping centre in Nottingham.
The one in Haverhill got bought by an independent business person who changed virtually nothing except the name, went from Wimpy to Jenny's in the same font. Like, it was bizarre.
I wonder if they stopped paying the franchise rights.
Could be. There's still two in Suffolk. There's one in Felixstowe, one in Lowestoft. Mate, there's loads. We're fine.
Yeah?
We're absolutely fine. Where are you? What county are you in? You're in Merseyside.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got one in Birkenhead, boy.
That's miles away. That's across the river.
There's 12 in London. Is Wimpy having a resurgence? What's happening? The fuck?
I think, didn't Wimpy like ostensibly do smash burgers like thousands of years before smash burgers were even a thing as well? So like maybe they are having a resurgence because smash burgers are the de
Makes
rigueur.
sense. Bring back Wimpy. Anyway,
so all that means is it's a long way before we can make our last night at the Wimpy slasher movie.
If we'd have done it fucking 10 years ago, we'd have been right at the sweet spot.
Yeah,
Idiots.
So yeah, The Hazing is great. It's good fun. I give it 9 laps with the demonic tongue out of 14.
Laps. Did not know where you were going there.
Yeah.
Because
I give
of
it the
what
full
laps
alphabet.
Did
you ever learn that?
The full tongue tornado.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, nine laps. That's all. That's
9 out of 14.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good rating. Well played. So that's the movie The Hazing. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I finish a movie like that, I immediately want to follow a podcast on social media.
I think you should do that at FT Horror Show, at all the places where social media happens.
Yeah. Leave a review. Write some words. Tap a
make
star.
sure,
Preferably
Make
5.
sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have automatic downloads turned on. And make sure that you join us next week for another horror movie at Final Transmission.
That was an ending. You did an ending.
That was an ending.
Wow.